Now at 9, authorities in Southwest Missouri search for an escaped inmate. Plus some tips on how you can save money on your energy bill. And some Joplin school bus routes have been late several times already this year. The district tells us why.
The 4 states' most watched news starts now.
Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Jalen Banks. Area authorities are looking for an inmate who escaped while getting medical treatment. The escapee is this man, 41-year-old Michael Ray Durrison. Newton County, Missouri authorities were holding him in a fugitive warrant out of Louisiana. He had not previously been suspected of violence, but law officers say as Durrison was getting treatment at Freeman Neosho, he assaulted a law officer and escaped. Durrison is described as 6 feet tall, 160 pounds with black hair and hazel eyes. He was last seen wearing a white t-shirt and orange scrub pants. And now, Doug joins us with the first look at the weather.
Well, it's been way too hot outside over the past, 3 or 4 days. Temperatures have been heating up. In fact, our highs over the past couple days have been above our average high for the middle of July, which is kind of crazy. 97 today, record was 98, so we made a run at it. Started at 75, normal high is 81 for this time of the year. We're still sitting into lower 80s right now. Case in Point, Nevada, 84, 79 in Miami. Parsons at 86 degrees. You can see pretty much clear skies, just a few upper level clouds, which are kind of scooting through the region. All right, so here's your day planner. 6 a.m. 76, 9 a.m. 81, 91 by noon, but our high temp right back up to about 98 degrees during the afternoon. Now, we do have some rain chances in the forecast. We're going to look at that here in just a bit.
4-staters might have increased utility bills since last year. And KOAM Jana Haldala gets advice on how you can save energy and money.
According to a study by the National Energy Assistance Directors Associations, utility bills have gone up 15% since last year.
If you have a fan on, maybe you're not using as much electricity through your HVAC system, but you are using electricity through the fan.
People love fans. Matt Daniel with Community Action Partnership says people should decide if to run their air conditioner or their fan, but not both at once. Also, make sure your home is weatherproof.
If you have some holes or broken glass or broken windows, best thing is to do is to fix those, seal those holes up, and try to keep the outside air out and the inside air in.
Daniel says pay attention to the water heater and the pipes.
We insulate the water heater with a water heater jacket to try to keep the water heater from working so hard and coming on so often. We wrap the water lines.
A woman I spoke to says updating old appliances saved her money in the long run.
Our electric bill was actually $254 this month, which isn't too bad because in the past, before we replaced our appliances, this time of year it would run $400 or $500.
She says she keeps her lamps and TV on power strips so energy doesn't flow through when the appliances are not in use. Stever says outlet gaskets helped her too.
And you just take your face plates off and then you put those little foam gaskets in there, and the external walls, and it'll keep that air from coming in through the outlets and switches.
In Joplin, Janna Haudala, KOAM News.
And if you're interested in finding more energy saving tips, just go to our website at koamnewsnow.com. Some drivers in Jasper County can expect traffic delays and detours starting today. Crews began resurfacing 3 bridges at the Missouri Route 249 and Missouri Route 171, which interchange near Webb City. The northbound Route 249 to Route 171 bridge will be closed for up to 5 consecutive weekends. Drivers will need to take the detour of northbound Route 249 to Jasper County Route HH to northbound Route 171. Joplin students are arriving home later than normal from the school buses due to bus driver shortages. Bus drivers are running multiple routes to make sure students are getting home safe. Last year, the buses ran 54 routes, and this year they're running 45. Currently, 6 new bus drivers are training to get their CDL and start driving.
Our transportation department has done a great job, gone above and beyond to combine routes, to bring drivers back, to help drivers, and to assist in any way they can.
If you're interested in applying as a bus driver for Joplin schools, you can visit our website at koamnewsnow.com. The U.S. Senator from Kansas, Jerry Moran, today was in the southeastern part of the Sunflower State. He toured farms in Columbus and in Scammon. Moran is currently reworking the Farm Bill.
I've been reminded of here already is we need to make certain that crop insurance, an insurance program that isn't so much about the price of anything, it's about the lack of production due to poor weather, a flood, hailstorm, drought.
Senator Moran toured 5 e-farms in Columbus and the Atkinson family farm in Scammon. Some Oklahoma educators could see another potential pay raise in their future. The state superintendent of public instruction, Joy Hoffmeister, submitted a request to give teachers a pay raise of $5,000. Oklahoma teachers last received an official pay raise in 2018 for $6,100 and an additional salary increase averaging $1,220 in 2019. The budget request will be presented this Thursday. Queen Elizabeth II was laid to rest today, the UK coming together to remember the life of Britain's longest reigning monarch. Fox News correspondent Madeline Rivera has a wrap from London.
An emotional day here in London as the UK said goodbye to its Queen of 70 years. The day of mourning began with a funeral service at Westminster Abbey, attended by President Biden and the First Lady, along with hundreds of world leaders and dignitaries honoring a monarch respected across the globe.
Her late Majesty famously declared on a 21st birthday broadcast that her whole life would be dedicated to serving the nation and Commonwealth. Rarely has such a promise been so well kept.
After the service, the Queen's coffin was taken on a gun carriage through the streets of London. King Charles led the royal family in walking behind the Queen's coffin. Hundreds of thousands came out to bid farewell to the only Queen most of them have ever known.
You can't actually quite believe that we won't see her anymore, that this was the last thing, the last time. It's very sad.
The procession then made the journey to Windsor Castle. King Charles and senior royals once again joined the procession, walking behind the Queen's coffin into St. George's Chapel, where a committal service was held inside. And then, in a particularly poignant moment, the imperial state crown, orb, and scepter were removed from the coffin and placed on the altar, symbols of the Queen's reign that will now be passed down to her son, King Charles III. The Queen was laid to rest in a private ceremony. She was buried next to her late husband, Prince Philip. In London, Martha Rivera, Fox News.
We now take time to honor tonight's four-state hero. Sergeant Perry Parker, a Joplin native, served in the Army from 1946 till 1952. He served in Korea and Germany. He also served in the 92nd Engineer Unit. To Sergeant Perry Parker, we thank you, our four-state hero. And Doug is next with a complete look at the forecast. And later in sports, McDonald County aims for their 4th straight win against the Nixa Eagles.
Well, it definitely turned out to be a hot one today. Upper 90s to near 100 degrees, right at record highs across the region, which, no, we don't want that really any time of the year, maybe the winter. But, of course, today, into the upper 90s. We should be topping out right around 80 degrees. Nice shot, Indigo Sky Casino and Resort near Seneca, Missouri. We have pretty much clear skies for us right now. Look at the past 2 days. Mid to upper 90s yesterday, upper 90s for us today. Unfortunately, we're going to do this again, at least over the next 2 days. But we do have some changes moving in. Let's jump ahead. Let's go to Wednesday, 5 p.m. Look at this. This is a cold front. Still going to warm near 100 degrees. But look at the front. It dives through, and this gives us relief from the heat. By early Thursday morning, we're also going to get some light showers, especially in our northern counties along and north of I-44. But look at Thursday afternoon. High temps into the 70s, so we're going to cut our highs by about 20 degrees. Now, here's the bad side, or the bad news. Wind switched right back out of the south on Friday, back into lower 90s for afternoon highs. But at least we get a little bit of relief, which is something we need. Still warm out there right now. Case in point, 84 in Nevada, 79 Miami, 83 in Pittsburgh, 84 Independence, 79 in Anderson. Clear skies. We're sitting at 82. Southerly winds are light. Humidity is at 49%. There's not a whole bunch going on here. You can just see the upper level clouds kind of scooting through the area, but in general, mostly clear skies. We got a few showers, a few thunderstorms out across western parts of Kansas, but overall, we're just kind of dominated by a big dome of high pressure right on top of us, and that's going to keep our weather pretty quiet, at least over about the next 36 hours, and then we'll start to see a few changes. All right, let's go through time. Let's step through the overnight hours. We'll stop in the morning about 6 o'clock. Lower 70s, plenty of sunshine through the morning hours. We warm into lower 90s by the noon hour. As we get into the afternoon, upper 90s to near 100, Parsons, Independence, Chanute, Yates Center, Iola. It's going to be way up there. Here's your day planner, starting at 72, 91 by noon, high temp 98, which would tie the record high. So another extremely hot day, very similar to what we saw today. All right, tomorrow night, much of the same. Drop back lower 70s, pretty much clear skies. As we go into Wednesday, we heat up again, upper 90s, see a few showers trying to pop up by the evening hours as that next cold front heads in our direction. 98 tomorrow, 98 on Wednesday, but only 77 on Thursday, which is going to feel great, which is actually the first day of fall officially at 8:04 p.m. I think it is. 88 on Friday, back into the 90s Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, the summer heat continues, or
yeah.
I guess fall heat now.
Yeah, it's kind of all over the place.
For sure.
Yep.
All right, thank you, Doug. And coming up, Puerto Rico is once again picking up the pieces.
Fiona has come and gone, but the rain continues here in a battered Puerto Rico. I'm Will Dudley in Ponce. A report is coming up.
Officials in Puerto Rico are assessing the damage and working to get lights back on after a major hit from Hurricane Fiona. Fox Weather correspondent Will Nunley has more from Puerto Rico.
We're still in the middle of this event.
Officials in Puerto Rico say they remain in rescue and response mode following a direct hit from Hurricane Fiona. The storm made landfall on Sunday, packing 90-mile-per-hour winds, knocking out power to the entire island, more than 3 million people. Record flooding is being reported, with the governor calling the damage, quote, catastrophic.
Unfortunately so, I have to say that the hurricane and now the storm, the related storm, has covered the whole island.
About 22 inches of rain falling here so far, and another 4 to 8 inches are in the forecast. Hundreds of homes and businesses damaged or destroyed, prompting water rescues and widespread evacuations. At least 1,300 people slept in shelters last night, bringing back memories of Hurricane Maria, which devastated the island 5 years ago this week.
You will expect to not see this again after what happened, but here we are again in the same situation with the same issues.
A state of emergency has been declared, with the White House promising not to leave Puerto Rico in the dark. There are also at least a dozen states sending aid or personnel, hoping to shift the rescue effort into recovery mode.
New York State will do everything in our power to help them. And we've always been there for each other. But now is when they need us the most.
Fiona is now moving north. It could hit Bermuda as a major hurricane by the end of the week. In Ponce, Puerto Rico, Will Nunley, Fox Weather.
Still ahead, Ukraine works to take back its territory.
Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky says his country is prepared to continue the work to reclaim territory held by Russian forces. I'm Jeff Paul in Kyiv. I've got the latest coming up.
Ukraine continues their counteroffensive as crews work to uncover hundreds of bodies in a mass grave, a scene they are calling a war crime. Fox News correspondent Jeff Paul is in Kyiv with the latest.
Russian troops striking a massive power plant in the southern region of Ukraine overnight, with authorities denouncing it as an act of terrorism. Meanwhile, Ukrainian forces continue to liberate towns and villages throughout the country. But as they do, they are beginning to uncover evidence of what they are calling war crimes. In the Kharkiv region, forces finding locations described as torture cells at a train station, supermarket, and a cellar of a home. They believe these locations were used to imprison, interrogate, and eventually kill many civilians, whose bodies were likely dumped afterwards. Following this, President Zelensky vowing that Ukraine is prepared to continue reclaiming territory.
Maybe now it seems to some of you that after a series of victories we have a certain lull, but this is not a lull. This is preparation for the next series. To the next series of very important words for us, which must be heard, because Ukraine must be free, all of it.
Meanwhile, crews continue their work in Izium to uncover hundreds of bodies in a mass grave, many of those bodies showing signs of torture. President Biden speaking about what it will mean to win the war in Ukraine.
Winning the war in Ukraine is to get Russia out of Ukraine completely and to recognize its sovereignty. But winning the war, the damage it's doing and the citizens and the innocent people are being killed, it's awful hard to count that as winning.
Prosecutors at Izium are working to build a war crimes case. Meanwhile, the Kremlin responding to the allegations, saying it's all, quote, a lie. In Kyiv, Jeff Paul, Fox News.
Up next, we'll head to Arizona to check out a home inspired by a cult classic movie. A Phoenix home gets a makeover, straight out of the pages from the Book of the Dead, thanks to these two homeowners' love for the film Beetlejuice. And Fox's Irene Snyder has more on the display and how it's grown over the years.
We both love Beetlejuice. You know, we've both seen it like 167 times, and it's getting funnier every single time we see it.
Matt Wiley and Karen Altamirano channeling their love for the classic Tim Burton film Beetlejuice, creating their very own Dante's Inferno.
And then the waiting room, we have Miss Argentina, the magician's assistant. You can actually sit down and take a picture here.
The couple started out buying Halloween decorations a few years ago, but after running into some defective products, they decided just to make their own. Everything here, minus the mannequins, is homemade.
So it started with just the worm and the signs on the top, and then as the years went on, we added the devil and the extra signs, and then the grave last year, and then the waiting room is this year's addition.
The waiting room was actually a lot more difficult than we thought. We didn't know if we could actually pull it off, but I played with textures and colors and paints, and we eventually ended up making the walls, and then the furniture. Everything is thrifted or like secondhand.
And they encourage people to come up to the waiting room and take a picture. Then again, do use caution. After all, you can never trust the living.
30 more minutes of news, weather, and sports coming your way. A group of divers are exploring the cave system at Roaring River State Park. We'll see how they're doing it. Plus, why an iconic Joplin statue is relocated to Mercy Park. Divers are going to new depths in the Southwest Missouri Spring. A group is exploring the underwater portions at the beginning of Roaring River. And KOAM's Amber Jenkins has more.
Roaring River near Cassaville springs from a cave. Kids Rebreathers divers worked with the state park to map out the underwater cave's depths.
Wanting to try to get the remapping of our cave done, we had no idea that the possibility was there that they could actually go through the restriction. But they're world renowned and they were able to pull it off for us.
Before the divers could go into the cave, they applied and petitioned the state environment boards for approval.
The current leadership here in the state park, it's due to these individuals that this project has been possible. So all of the accomplishments and successes have been a big driving factor from Superintendent Joel.
Kiss Rebreathers divers are named after an important piece of diving equipment called a rebreather. The lead diver, Mike Young, improved the rebreather to make it smaller, recyclable, and last longer on deep dives.
And with this unique configuration of a rebreather, it allows us to side mount our scuba tanks, where we wear the scuba tanks on our sides. And what that does is it makes our body profile very narrow, so that we can fit through these tight restrictions.
This is the first dive exploration since the 90s. Kiss Rebreather divers are using the technological advancements to explore Roaring River deeper than any dive team before.
Goal here on our monthly visits are to push the limits of possibility using the Kiss Rebreather technology and see where the cave takes us.
Reporting in Cassville, Amber Jenkins, KOAM News.
Kiss Rebreather divers are planning more dives at Roaring River in the future, but are not releasing specific dive dates. Joplin's Mercy Park is now the new official home of a statue that was salvaged after the tornado. The statue, Compassion, stood on the grounds at the former St. John's Hospital. The statue was hidden after Irving Elementary School was built. The statue was rededicated today after Crossland Construction helped move the statue to this more visible location.
My wife and I walked up through here, and when I was walking up the stairs here, I just couldn't imagine. This was one of the most awe-inspiring sculptures I've ever seen. It just looked like it had the weight of the world, and it could hold everything. It just almost took you to tears.
The statue was created in 1996 and was paid for through fundraisers. The circus is in town, Altamont, Kansas. C&M Circus hosted their event at McMillan Park. It featured performances under the Big Top, Animals, and Bouncy House. The president is making news over the weekend by declaring the coronavirus pandemic over. He also said that the U.S. would defend Taiwan if China decides to invade, setting off another episode of confusion over American policy and prompting a condemnation from Beijing. Fox News White House correspondent Peter Ducey has more.
Which way are we going?
President Biden back in the U.S. after the Queen's funeral, and the country has changed a lot since he left.
The pandemic is over.
It wasn't just 4 days ago.
We're dealing with the global challenge of a once-in-a-generation pandemic.
And it isn't for administration officials who claim they have legal grounds to cancel some student debt because the pandemic is an ongoing national emergency.
The HEROES Act, page 637 to be exact, provides access, gives me the authority to provide a waiver to ensure that Americans are not worse off after an emergency, a national emergency, which the pandemic was.
But President Biden is turning the page.
We still have a problem with COVID. We're still doing a lot of work on it. But the pandemic is over.
President Biden also created confusion with this answer about a potential Chinese invasion of Taiwan.
Would U.S. forces defend the island?
Yes, if in fact there was an unprecedented attack.
That's more definitive than the longstanding U.S. policy of strategic ambiguity. But a White House spokesperson says, quote, "Our Taiwan policy hasn't changed. That remains true," even though the president made the claim about fighting Chinese invaders twice.
So unlike Ukraine, to be clear, sir, U.S. forces, U.S. men and women would defend Taiwan in the event of a Chinese invasion.
Yes.
The president's approval rating has risen to 45%, highest since last October in an NBC poll. But opponents sense vulnerability.
I'm going to start a campaign to make sure he runs again because I know we'll win the presidency in 24.
Biden himself unwilling to commit.
I'm a great respecter of fate. And so what I'm doing is I'm doing my job. I'm going to do that job. And within the time frame that makes sense after this next election cycle here, going into next year, make a judgment of what to do.
Mr. President, you are the oldest president ever.
Pretty good shape, huh?
President Biden laid the groundwork for his last campaign, stumping for Democrats during the last midterm cycle. So his re-election could be complicated by the fact that this midterm cycle, very few Democrats are asking him to join them on the trail. At the White House, Peter Ducey, Fox News.
The timing of a call by a top Senate Republican for nationwide abortion restrictions is getting a lot of attention. South Carolina Senate Lindsey Graham is defending his move, which has put many in the GOP in an uncomfortable position heading into the November elections. Fox News senior national correspondent Rich Edson takes a look.
I'm pro-life, even in an election year. And to those who suggest that being pro-life is losing politics, I reject that.
Though many Republicans are rejecting a proposal from Senator Lindsey Graham to ban abortions nationwide after 15 weeks of pregnancy.
I think a better approach probably will be to allow the states to work through this.
For months, Republicans have built their midterm pitch on inflation, the border, and a nationwide increase in crime. Graham says abortion should be part of that argument.
To my Republican colleagues, now's the time to stand up and be counted. The pro-life movement is counting on you.
A newly released NBC poll shows that 61% of voters disapprove of the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade. Democrats have a 22-point advantage over Republicans on abortion. A recent Fox News poll showed a 12-point spread. The same Fox News poll found about 45% of voters are extremely concerned about abortion.
I encourage everyone to exercise your right to express your voice on this issue through your vote.
In New Hampshire, within hours of Republican Don Bolduc's primary victory, his opponent, Democratic Senator Maggie Hassan, ran an ad claiming a Bolduc victory meant a nationwide ban on abortion.
It's the only thing she's got. It's a distraction.
She wants to take a very, very important issue and, like she always does, make it about herself.
Senator Graham acknowledges his abortion bill won't pass anytime soon, but he says he will continue fighting for it because, as of June, there is no longer any constitutional prohibition preventing Congress from setting abortion policy. In Washington, Rich Edson, Fox News.
A bit later, more fears about a recession.
The Federal Reserve is set to announce another interest rate hike decision. I'm Mike Emanuel in Washington, plus what President Biden is saying about inflation and the economy next.
Economists and investors are on edge this week as the Federal Reserve is set to announce another interest rate hike. With last week's inflation report, many are fearful the Fed may get too aggressive and send the economy into a downward spiral. High prices are also a central issue for congressional lawmakers campaigning for re-election. Fox News Chief Washington correspondent Mike Emanuel takes a closer look.
Millions of Americans are feeling the impact of higher prices. Despite inflation running at a historic rate, President Biden argues the country is still on the right track and the worst may be over.
We're in a position where for the last several months it hasn't spiked. It is just barely, it's been basically even.
If the administration needs a helping hand to bring prices down, it'll have to come from the Federal Reserve. The board meets this week with a rate hike expected on Wednesday. Fed Chair Jerome Powell vowed last month to aggressively raise interest rates, even if it brings economic pain.
I am of the opinion that they are just off the rails enough. They may actually try 100 basis points, a full percentage hike.
With the midterm elections fast approaching, Republicans have a 19-point advantage against Democrats on dealing with the economy, according to an NBC News poll.
Doesn't matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat, you're white or black, you're rich or poor. High inflation hurts everybody.
However, Democrats believe they can still make their case to voters.
So we're seeing progress with 3 straight months of declining gas prices. We're seeing progress with the president's leadership in Ukraine to get the embargo for wheat exports, which will bring down food prices both here and abroad.
Early voting for the midterm election begins in 4 states this week. In Washington, Mike Emanuel, Fox News.
Coming up, the latest installment in the Star Wars franchise takes it back to the beginning of the rebellion. More on Andor when we come back. A new streaming series takes Star Wars fans into the earliest days of the rebellion. And just like Anakin Skywalker, the Force is strong with Rick Demigella in this report.
To steal from the Empire? You just walk in like you belong.
Andor is a prequel to Rogue One, a Star Wars story, and Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope.
They can't imagine that someone like me would ever get inside their house.
Diego Luna is back as Rogue One's Cassian Andor.
I was part of the whole process. I had chance to digest everything, to understand deeper why things were this way or this other way, to be part of the process of choosing the cast, the team, looking at the designs and getting it all in.
Genevieve O'Reilly reprises her role as Mon Mothma, a character she has portrayed on film in Rogue One, a Star Wars story, and the animated Star Wars Rebels.
I feel incredibly fortunate to have been afforded the opportunity to step into the shoes of this woman at different times in my life, which are reflective of the different times in her life.
Diego Luna shares that sentiment.
I am a very lucky man, you know. I thought Rogue One was the only chance I was gonna have to be part of this world, and suddenly here I am, you know, still talking to audiences about new stuff coming out and getting the chance to explore deeper on the character.
Every day we wait, they get stronger. Let's take them by surprise.
In Hollywood, I'm Rick Damigella.
Well, that's our time for tonight, and thank you for joining us. But first, we'll leave you with a video of a dog surfing competition in California. Remember to be safe, and we'll do this all again tomorrow. See you then.